Welcome to another edition of Spotlight. This is our 25th edition, and it's sort of a special one. We're going to be talking about the recent election and express some of our feelings about the results of that election, as well as try to analyze where some people are in the election and where some people have disagreements about the election. So first of all, I'd like to welcome Leo Graham and Kevin Kuntz, who are going to be our advisory panel on this. And gentlemen, just as a starter, do you think the election's over?
I thought it was over 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago or maybe 6 weeks ago. It was over on the day after election day. How's that?
Okay, well, I mean, there happen to be some parties who don't quite agree with that.
The obstructionist group of people grasping at straws. I used to think that I've just had too much conspiracy theory, but with this guy, you don't know. My current guess is if Trump can disrupt this long enough, make things drawn out enough, confusing enough, and truly make Biden's start difficult and appear to be somewhat chaotic, he's got himself a leg up on 2024. Trump does. I certainly assume that he's running. There's only been one president of the United States who split terms. Grover Cleveland.
Grover Cleveland
Lost the election, came back. But I think that's exactly where Trump is going. The more chaos he can spread, the better his chances.
As I recall, in between his terms, he was having a family.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, now
Children to the White House.
let's get down to the presidential election. Now, I'm just going to read something now to give you what the popular vote was. Now, these are not exact numbers because as the states start certifying, the numbers change a little bit, but not substantially. Okay, and the popular vote, Biden got 81,900,468 votes, or 51.33% of the vote. Trump got 74,111,419 votes, or 49.96% of the vote. Now, this is something we can agree on.
Yes, I think so.
Certainly.
Okay.
Yes, the absolute numbers could change. It doesn't here, it doesn't there. But yes, certainly the percentages.
Okay. Now that effectively means the Electoral College, and again, this may, I don't think this is going to change, but my count of it right now is Biden has 306, Trump has 232, and you need 270 to win.
Right.
That's what I got.
Okay.
It's not victory, but not
Now,
Atlanta.
Hey, we just alluded to the legal impact now about the election, and I don't know how many court suits the Trump campaign has filed, but it must be in the 40s or 50s by now.
I think the number was like 30 something. But
Yeah.
Who's arguing over numbers at that point?
Okay. Is this something we should be concerned about?
No.
I mean, is there any legitimacy to his claim that this was a rigged election?
No.
None.
Leo?
So let's pretend this. No, the election was as fair perhaps the most. The question is he's taking the long view. What is it? He knows these things are getting tossed out of court. What's the long view on this?
Okay, now, there aren't any more state recounts. In this election, Biden managed to what they call flip a number of key states, which means these were states that were lost to the Democrats in the last presidential election, including Michigan, Wisconsin, surprisingly Georgia, and not quite surprisingly Arizona. See, am I missing any?
Pennsylvania.
Oh,
There's the
Pennsylvania. Yeah, thank you. Now, as far as the the predictions in this election, how do you think the pundits did with the presidential election only?
They did terribly. From a strict point of view of understanding what the final vote was, they were no place close. They had Biden probably 55 to 60%, and Trump somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 to 40%. They were off on all counts, all the way across. They missed the supposed power of Trump, even though he did lose by basically almost 2% in the popular vote. They missed it 100%. So they're going to have to do something to change their polling ways.
I tend to think that as technology changes, polling methodologies have become outdated. Roughly speaking, increasing numbers of people don't have landlines. The usual way to conduct a poll is to make a phone call. Well, that is a less and less valid point of view. Sending out mass emails, again, you don't know who you're talking to. So how it is that polls work is going to have to change. And neither the pollsters nor certainly myself sitting here have the slightest idea how that is.
Okay. Now, what about the state of Florida? That was supposedly a very pivotal state in this whole thing, and Trump did end up carrying it again. What do you think happened in Florida, Kevin?
I think it's probably the Cuban vote more than anything else. They were very strongly pro-Trump, and the other Latin American vote as well. But most of the Latin American, or what we classify as Latin American, classified as Latin American votes, the Cubans were much more in favor of Trump than anybody anticipated.
Okay,
they're a significant part of the population, and I don't know the percentage number, but it's a significant part of the population of Cuba.
Well,
I'm sorry, of Florida. The Cubans are
pretty much they tend to be the majority in Cuba. But there was also a pretty sophisticated.
Nobody likes a wise guy.
There was a pretty sophisticated. Misinformation campaign directed at Florida out of, I think, Venezuela, talking about how Biden was going to do things specifically to the United States that Castro had done, and going down the line and comparing Biden to Castro and their loss. And there's a really well-funded campaign that Twitter and its colleagues kept trying to knock off, and they kept popping up elsewhere. Whoever was paying for it lavishly. And it apparently did have some effect.
I hadn't heard that one. Oh, okay.
Okay, there's an interesting question that arises. Are the Cubans to be considered Latinos in terms of their political leanings? Because in Arizona, the Latino vote was very significant in the Democrats.
The answer is, I don't know how you classify people. Most of these are second generation people who are voting. They're no longer Mexican or Cuban. They're American. So I think it's a bad classification.
Okay, fair enough. Now, we've talked about the pundits on the presidential election itself, but what about the congressional and Senate elections, and even more significant, the really down ballot voting? The Democrats really lost seats.
Well, I think that was an effect of probably the left wing having a bad appeal to the, should we say, again, you use a classification, the common man, and they were afraid of what would happen with the left wing coming in. And I think the Republicans played on that and played on it well, and had an effect on the down part of it. And the Democrats did not come out aggressively against it.
Leo, what's your take?
Well, my take is, in many ways, Kevin is right. And not for the reasons he thinks. I think notions of the left wing and radical leftist, this is a vocabulary that grew up out of the Republican Party, out of the massive defeat of Goldwater in '64. They put together think tanks and smart people. Certainly the National Review was kind of front and center on this. And so they took ordinary stuff and branded it as radical and leftist. I'll remind you that the Clean Water and Clean Air Act were signed by a Republican. And no one of whom I'm aware is going to call Richard Milhouse Nixon a leftist anything. And passed comfortably by, it was a Democrat-controlled House and Senate, but the Republicans certainly, weighed in. If we were trying to pass the Clean Water Act now, you can hear it now, radical leftists are going to take our jobs, they're killing. Well, they've changed the vocabulary. The actions haven't changed. The head of the Minnesota Republican Party, talking to Democrats that didn't do well in Minnesota, was begging the Democrats, please, we haven't, in rural Minnesota, we haven't gone to the left. We've been always who we are. It's the party that's gone to the left. The party hasn't gone to the left. The name calling has gone to the left. And it works.
Okay.
I think two things happened. Leo is correct that the Republicans, I think, accurately described what would turn votes, and the Democrats supplied them with the proper venue for that.
Okay, now, what about just the basic strategy? You've already, Kevin, you've already sort of just alluded to the strategy of the Republican Party. Now, what were the Democrats trying to do? Were they afraid of the economy, for example?
I don't think they were afraid of the economy. I believe that they did not want to associate themselves with the far left part or the progressive part of the party, and consequently did not back or those people as sufficiently as they could have in the local elections. The Republicans took advantage of it.
The Republicans have been brilliant at this. One of the things, again, they figured out about in the 70s, was about local elections, school boards, state government, state reps. And they've been really good at concentrating on these things because, the school board member becomes the state rep kind of thing. And every 10 years, they redistrict. Redistricting, gerrymandering. I learned gerrymandering in the 4th grade. It is a critical way to get your party into office and keep it there. The Republican Party has been extremely good at paying attention to that. Howard Dean tried to do that in the election with Obama. However, Obama and Dean didn't get along, and Dean was out in very short order. Remember his 50-state strategy? And he said, no, we fight everything. We start with the school boards. That was Dean. And Obama had no time for it. I think Howard was right.
Okay. Now, if we all are in agreement that Biden is the president-elect, what about the transition now? We're accustomed as a nation to a smooth transition of power, and it began very negatively just after the election. What's your take on this, Kevin?
So I don't think we should have been surprised by Donald Trump. Donald Trump, by my classification, is a man who has no couth. I didn't vote for him at any point in time, and I am a Barry Goldwater conservative Republican. Donald Trump, to me, is a manipulative person who took the shawl of the Republican Party and ran as president, and because he is a brilliant salesman, sold the public on his platform of America First. Now, I do believe that he's surrounded himself with some very intelligent people and accomplished a lot of good things as president. We should not be surprised at his actions at this point in time. He does not like to lose. He's a sore loser, as we used to say. And he's demonstrating this by far and away better than any person I've ever watched in my entire life. He's a sore loser. So I believe that that will come across ultimately as that's what he is. He's a sore loser. He will try to manipulate that and challenge it. He's been so far successful in keeping his body politic, who has supported him, in his favor and crying out the same chants. But I think that time, at least I hope not. I hope that he doesn't run again in 24. If he keeps himself in front of the public, he probably will run again. And I hope to God that somebody, whether it's a Ted Cruz, who I think is a brilliant debater, and winds up facing him as in the Republican primaries, wipes him around the debate stage like a dirty cloth, because that's what he is.
Oh, well done. Trump is being so petulant about losing the election and behaving so, and he still has significant power until Biden says, "So help me God." And he's talking about every week a new sanction against Iran, things like this. Well, some people in his own cabinet are getting so just fed up with it. Bill Barr, of all people, is threatening to quit early, just symbolically to disassociate himself kind of on his way out the door. This is Bill Barr, a man whose conscience is so ironclad that he had no particular problem signing off on enhanced interrogation techniques. We'd call it torture for W. Bush. He had no problem with torture, but he's having a problem with Trump. So I'm not sure how his own internal compass works, but that's an interesting turn.
He found out what torture was. He's being tortured himself.
God, I think perhaps so. Goes around, comes around.
Okay, we'll get back to some of the more general things about this election, but let's get on to the congressional side now. Let's talk about the U.S. Senate, which right now is sort of at a very interesting crossroads. I've forgotten, what is it, January 6th, they have the election in Georgia?
January 5th or 6th.
But there are two Republicans seeking re-election. And what do you think the odds are that the Democrats can take one or both of those seats, Kevin?
Boy, again, it's a guess at this point in time. Both of the elections were relatively close. It's a toss-up at this point in time. As I say, identifying as a Goldwater Republican, I sure hope both Republicans win, just so that we keep a little bit of an even balance between the two houses, and maybe we'll have some real cooperation and working, and get some people to pass some bills, rather than having them. If we have a Democrat steamroll that runs through, it might embolden the Republicans, and we could have a Tea Party effect take place, and the Democrats will get kicked out in 2022.
Well, certainly, Trump had no problem when the House and the Senate were both Republican, steamrolling his stuff through. Certainly, what is of interest is the pollsters had the Democrats picking up seats in the House. They lost. They got the House by a razor margin. And considering the fact that incumbents, the party of the incumbent generally loses some seats in the midterm, the House is razor thin right now. And if both of those Democrats win in Georgia, Ralph, you're going to have to schedule a special show, because I'm going to buy a hat and eat it.
You think both Democrats will win?
No, I think there's no chance of it.
Oh,
Both
okay.
of them, absolutely not.
Okay.
One, anything can happen. One, two, no. Alas, not.
We will then have a Republican Senate at that point in time. And maybe
Well, yeah,
Okay.
we will, right. Even, yeah, if they both win, if both Democrats win,
and it's
then we
Kamala.
got 50-50 tie, and poor Kamala Harris doesn't get to travel around the world anymore. She gets to sit in the
She
big
has to-
chair in
she has to
DC.
stay- She has to stay and preside over the Senate.
Which, whoa,
Every
talk
vote.
about Bill Barr going to hell. That would,
Now, talking about this, given the fact that Collins and Maine did re-win, which was a rather questionable thought at that time, but do you think there are three Republicans who might be converting in terms of their votes, leaning more to the Democrats?
Well, you have Susan Collins, you have Mitt Romney, who is
Yeah.
who's your third going to be?
Utah, and the third one might be, I can't remember her name now, the senator from Alaska.
Oh, right.
because, Susan Collins, who at the end of the day had to, come up mean. She really thought that the election was going to be another thank you from the good people of Maine. Well, it wasn't. And she got mean. And I think her feelings got hurt. And I think she's going to be a much more reliable Republican vote than ever she has been.
Interesting. You might be right.
Well, okay.
But she's in for 6 more years now, so
Yep.
she can relax a little bit. She doesn't have to worry so much, because I don't think, this is her second or third term, Leo. Do you remember?
Third,
It's her third?
Yeah, I
at
can't
least-
imagine her again. She's no kid.
Yeah, I don't think she'd run again, right?
Now, as far as the leadership in the Senate, there's probably no doubt that McConnell will stay as the Republican leader. What about them on the Democratic side?
Well, Schumer shoots his mouth off all the time, and then also shoots himself in the foot. So he's a shrewd politician. I think he will stay in charge, or he will keep I can't see anybody coming in right now as a challenger.
Now, whether or not Schumer is effective as a national figure is debatable, but whether or not he is effective as a street brawler in his own party in the Senate to keep the seat, I don't think that's a question at all. And once again, Nancy Pelosi, talk about someone who has been chronically underestimated, I think because she was a woman. If they come tougher than she, let me know. These are, on the Democratic side, these are two seasoned hardball players within their caucuses.
Okay, well, now let's get to the House side of the election. The Democrats lost 5 seats?
I think they lost 5, and there's a possibility that they can lose another 2, which are the elections are so close. Those 2 have not been decided. I think one is separated by 20 votes, I believe. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And the other one is by not significantly more. It's like 2,000. So they could lose both of those. And right now, both of those are in the Republican quote category because they have more votes, whether they get changed, and they're so small they can swing either way.
Okay. Leo?
Well, the House is a razor thin margin anyway, and members of the House, as opposed to members of the Senate, are much more difficult to corral. I think there's just more cats to attempt to get in line, so that a majority of 4 or 6 in the House really isn't much of a majority. You can't really line up your caucus. That there are wildcats everywhere in both parties, and so that's not much of a margin. It's certainly not a betting margin. The Senate, they tend to be a little more party line, but the House, you've always got somebody who, I ran on the grandma's cookie campaign, and if you don't like her cookies, I'm not voting for you. And I don't know what to do with them. And they're not just Southern lunatics, which is what we contend to think. No, those kind of people show up all over the country. They peppered the landscape, and they're simply not reliable votes.
Okay. Now, as far as the leadership, if my memory and mathematics are correct, Pelosi, this would be her last term as leader of the House, regardless of what happens in the future. She had agreed 2 years ago to only serve 4 years.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah.
I don't know whether,
I think again, she's no youngster. I believe is she
No,
not?
she's not. Anyway, yeah.
I believe she's 80 years old. So that'll make her in the next election 82 years old. I mean, we don't have a whole bunch of old people in the House of Representatives. Sometimes we get a bunch of old people in the Senate, but generally speaking, we do not get that older age into the House of Representatives.
No. Although, her pledge to only be speaker, is it worth the paper it's printed on? Maybe. If she is clearly the most effective street fighter in the House, and if she wants, I think Kevin may have a point. 82. How much longer do you want to do this?
Right.
And particularly if the Republicans lose the House at any level, being the Speaker of the House, it's a pretty good job. Nice office, among other things. Being the minority leader of the House, not a very good job.
okay. Now, let's talk now about Vermont. I think the election there went just about as everyone expected it would go. And I think the only real questionable race, at least that I can think of in terms of the statewide officers, was the lieutenant governor.
Yeah, I agree. I was surprised.
Yeah.
I thought that he had a great chance to do it, and Scott was an overwhelming winner, but he couldn't pull him on his coattails. I don't know what the rationale. I don't know what happened.
It is because in Vermont, the greatest way to get elected is to be an incumbent. Incumbency. What we have to go back to somebody. Oh man, like Dean Davis, the last time who actually threw a sitting governor out of office. Peter Shumlin chose not to run again.
Right, he would have lost.
He may well have, but he chose not to run again. So still, it's been over 40 years, or more like 60 years, since an incumbent governor has lost his seat while running for it. Years ago, Doug Racine said, "Look, I promise, give us 4-year terms. I promise it'll not be for me." And he couldn't get it done. People say, "No, we want this direct control. We want to have our hands right on the button there," except they never pushed the button. So why don't you give
we're the last of 2 states. I believe it's only New Hampshire and Vermont.
Yep. And I think New Hampshire might have changed.
Oh,
no, I think they're every 2 years, aren't they?
It's insane because on the one hand, you can argue that the governor has to spend all his time running for governor, little of his time governing, except in Vermont, it's such a lock-in job that it doesn't seem to be much pressure, really. Phil Scott could have frankly won in his pajamas.
Phil Scott I think is a shrewd politician. He was a great senator. He was the minority leader, I think, in the Senate for a long period of time, and then ran for governor. And he took tremendous advantage of the COVID press conference. He was in front of the public every week and didn't have to really go out and campaign. And unfortunately, he did a good job, and the Democrats could not. The Democrats had to say he was doing a good job.
well, there were a lot of Democrats who just voted for Scott because of his performance with COVID.
Correct.
And I was one of them. But
oh, Ralph, oh, for shame. Oh, let me a little curtain to put over your square here.
Sorry, Leo, but I don't always vote the party.
Occasionally, I have left things blank before. I really have. Last time I considered voting for Republican was probably Gerald Ford, who I thought did a good job putting the country back together again, but I could not forgive the pardon.
Well, okay, now let's discuss the more general item of what was the impact of COVID-19 on this whole election process. Kevin?
Well, I think from a national point of view, I don't think it had an impact. I think locally it did, as we talked, because Phil Scott did such a great job, and he was such a contrast to the president in terms of his smoothness. Donald Trump, I do not think, did a bad job in fighting the COVID. He just he didn't articulate properly what he was trying to, what he should have been doing. He didn't articulate well. His failure to wear a mask had no effect whatsoever. It probably gave him credence with his participants who are still supporting him now. So I don't think it had any effect.
No, but
On a national basis.
I think COVID probably put Joe Biden in office. And I say that because for good or ill, and really presidents have less to do with this than many people think, but the economy was humming along. It really was. And COVID threw the biggest monkey wrench in that imaginable. Record unemployment, record numbers of people applying for it, numbers not seen since the Great Depression. And really the economy is not recovered now. So if you're the incumbent, you pay for that. And the millions and millions and millions of people out of work tend not to be pro the party that threw them out of work. And I truly think that if COVID hadn't happened, how Trump handled it was, the bad drug. What was that stupid antimalarial drug he was playing with? That kind of stuff did, showed him ill. But I think Kevin is right. His base probably not being marching for the scientific method didn't get hurt by that. But I think the debt economy probably put Biden in office.
I think what put Biden in office was that he won the key states that he needed to win. I mean, obviously it's a duh answer, slap myself on the head. Of course he won that way, but yeah. His focus was, and the focus of the party was smart enough from the Democratic Party to focus on those states, and Trump focused solely on those states. So they were able to get those swing states to switch, and that's what made the difference. You got to remember, Trump lost the popular vote against Hillary Clinton. And he lost the popular vote against Joe Biden. But he was smart enough in the last election to focus on those key states and got him to swing his way. This time, the Democrats from a Democratic point of view, focused on those states and got the swings that they needed.
One of the things I don't know at all, and wish I did, is do I think that Trump garnered the largest number of votes for a man who lost the election?
Yes, the answer is correct.
Yes, you did.
He did. I haven't read this anywhere, but it seems reasonable to me.
I think he also garnered the largest number of votes. It's just simply because of the size of the United States and because of the percentage turnout that we had this time around. He garnered more votes than any other winning president has ever.
I would not be surprised.
As a loser, he had more votes than any winning president.
Than any other winner, yeah. That makes sense.
Okay, let's talk about something a little different now. What about the Harris now being the vice president? what do you foresee is going to happen in terms of her role as vice president? Is she going to be, remember years and years ago, that was really a decorative office.
I think it still is. I mean, what are the remembrances that we have? What did Mike Pence do? What did Joe Biden do? They were sort of, caddies for the president. And I think that will continue to be the same. I don't have a good sense or feeling about her. I know what her background is, but I really don't have a real good feel for her. I don't think I think she'll be no different than Joe Biden was, no different than Mike Pence was during their periods as vice presidents.
Okay, Leo?
Well, I think probably Biden had a little more a little more traction in the Obama White House than Pence has with Trump. I mean, nobody has any traction with Trump.
Don't confuse me with the facts. My mind's made up.
I know.
That's the Donald Trump slogan.
Don't bother, yeah. But so what if Harris has a little more influence? She's bright. You could see the prosecutorial background that are coming out in the debate with Biden, where she pretty much spanked him hard in that presidential debate. I assume what she's doing, given her age and wide experiences, I assume that she thinks this is a great way to become president, and she may well be right.
Yep.
Well, okay.
I think.
Do you have any other observations about the election that you feel would be appropriate to make?
Yeah, I think that everybody is up in arms to the extent the thing I think that we should be surprised and happy about is that we pull this election off. I was worried that we were going to have some sort of street problems that we were having in Seattle and in Portland, and that none of that appeared at all. So it sort of gives me some confidence in the United States. We're smart. We're a smart country. The people, I think, are smart, and we're going to be okay. I don't like Joe Biden. I shouldn't say I don't dislike Joe Biden. I don't like Joe Biden's policies, but I support him as president of the United States, and I think that will be the feeling of the majority of the country.
Okay, Leo?
Well, I think that, unlike Kevin, I was always worried about the right showing up, the militia boys, the skinhead types showing up at the polls. I've long been much more afraid of a coup from the right than from the left in this country. The left is just, and always has been, God love them, too disorganized.
Well, they were very well organized in Seattle and Portland. And
it is Will Rogers' great line that, no, I don't belong to an organized political party. I'm a Democrat. And there's something to be said for that. Curiously, I think party structure is going to become increasingly important as we stay this polarized. For a time, when it was like Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford running, give me the significant policy difference. I couldn't then. I'm not sure. I certainly can't now. I'm not sure I could then. But now the lines are somewhat more heavily etched, and curious to see how we get out of this. What I don't understand is I don't understand people voting against their economic self-interest. And rural America does.
Okay, well, I want to thank both of you gentlemen. I think we've sort of covered the election as in a summary fashion as well as we could. I think it was a terribly interesting election, and I think there are a lot of new nuances that are going to come from this election that we're going to be seeing in the future. But at any rate, I want to thank you again, and that's going to be a wrap for now, and we'll see you sometime in the future.
Thanks, Ralph.
Gentlemen, as always, a pleasure.